If you're listening to this, then I'm dead. For real this time, I mean it, no takesy backsies. I was recently going through my collection of cards from the original Innistrad block, and a couple of interesting quirks about the plane's initial world building jumped out at me that I want to share, because while this is all probably just my interpretation, I think some of what I want to discuss potentially has deeper implications for how, in the broader sense, Magic's colour pie system and how it interacts, but also for Innistrad and for what good versus evil actually even means in the game or on the plane specifically, and how those theological concepts have room to be explored further in a future set if ever we visit Innistrad again. So today I thought I'd show a bunch of artwork from some of my favourite Innistrad cards and talk world building, specifically original Innistrad world building, and specifically in regard to where creatures and concepts from Innistrad sit within Magic's colour pie, what that means for the game at large, and where that leaves us if we want to return. See, one of my more popular videos theorises that Innistrad has a lost creature type, and I provide a bunch of evidence to support that notion. It's an idea that I stand behind because, well, you can't really see much in the way of the existence of that creature type in either the world building or on the cards, to be honest. I mean, there is some representation, but maybe not enough to suggest the creature type would be an entire missing archetype. However, I stand by the claim based less on what actually is there and more based on what isn't. If you take a step back and look at Innistrad's world as a whole, there's kind of obvious gaps. Other cards hint at areas where it kind of feels like something should be, but it kind of isn't. And so you have to look at the sparse evidence, sort of what's around the gap, to figure out what's missing. And that's what I did in the video, which I stand by, but I made a claim in there which, even at the time, I felt was shaky at best, and as time has gone on, well, it's not that I think I was wrong, and more that my understanding of how the plane functions has changed. And to cut a long story short, if you were looking at Innistrad from the perspective of expecting there to be 10 signpost creature types, one for each of the 10 two-colour pairs, then yes, there does appear to be something missing for blue-green. Or green-blue if you prefer, but I think the first one rolls off the tongue easier. But you may only think that if you're looking for 10 two-colour pairs, and maybe you're better off instead to look at what's actually on Innistrad and see how it fits together, without a preconceived notion of the colour pie. Take the existing framework rather than project one onto it, even if Magic itself is set up to project that 5-colour mana system basically onto everything. I mean, I've made that argument before for Universes Beyond sets, most famously with Spider-Man, where I said that Spider-Man's world didn't feel like it was a fit for the 5-colour system, but maybe that's applicable on Innistrad too. So, for instance, vampires. What colour are they? Traditionally black and red. Sometimes they branch out into other colours. Sorin has some white in him, for instance, but he's very much an exception, and the more recent sets do introduce more white vampires, but honestly the world building of those sets is a total mess, which is in part why I'm only really talking about the initial world building of the original Innistrad block today, because everything goes out of the window when you introduce the Eldrazi or start breaking your own continuity just to have a fucking wedding. Moonsilver Key for a big clock in the forest that controls the sky? What are you talking about? Are you bored of gothic horror, Watsy? Oh, we want to do a Halloween set with pumpkins. We'll make a new plane then. Harvest Festival, my arse. As if everyone from Kessig is going to forget a lifetime of horror and walk into the Uvenwald because a witch told them to. Nonsense, Jesus. Anyway, colour pie. Vampires are black and red, werewolves red and green, zombies blue-black. I think we can all agree. But what about Innistrad's other iconic creature types? Take spirits, for instance. In the previous video, I said spirits on Innistrad were blue-white, which feels appropriate, right? Except no. You're only going to think that way if you're looking at the set expecting 10 two-colour pairs. But if you actually look at Innistrad spirits on their own terms, they're 5-colour. Certainly blue and white make up the majority of them, but there are green, red and black ones too. And interestingly, with the way they're depicted, I kind of feel like maybe they should be 5 distinct creature types. To be honest, I even feel that way about the zombies too, as there's a clear divide between the risen corpses of black and the stitched scab abominations of blue. But back to spirits. Sure, for the most part, spirits on Innistrad are Geists, people that died that haven't moved on to the spirit realm, of which apparently there's a lot. I guess Psycho Pomp Avacyn was doing a bad job. But even within Geists, there are 2 types. There's the friendly-ish, still more or less human-looking, just doing what they did in life Geists, like Spectral Gateguard, Deadeye Navigator, and obviously St. Traft. But then in those same colours you've got spirits that have clearly gone insane. Wrapped in chains, presumably from burdens or guilt that they felt in life, slowly devolving into shapeless, faceless wisps of a past long since forgotten. And I ask, are these the same creatures? They're both quote-unquote spirits, sure, but I feel like there's enough of a distinction here that could be explored more in a future set. At least narratively, if not somehow mechanically too. I probably wouldn't actually give them a new creature type, but you could do what was done with zombies, where the blue scabs have more of a self-mill focus over the black zombies' resurrection, giving them more of a distinct mechanical identity to match the distinctiveness that we see in the flavour. And then if we branch out into the other colours of spirits, we see even more of a distinction. The black spirits are, well, are they human spirits? Or more importantly, were they ever human? I mean, looking at just Gloom Surgeon alone, he screams less person that has moved on from this world and more cryptid to me. Like a Slender Man type figure. Which makes me think maybe he's not someone who is deceased and is instead... Do you guys know what a tulpa is? I think maybe Gloom Surgeon is less a spirit and more a fear given form. Like an urban legend that people believed in so much that it took shape. Like a creature from a fairy tale. And then there's green, and like, those are just nature spirits. Spirits, yes, but in the sense that they're dead. Are they human spirits? Geists? I don't think so. I'd say that these share more in common with dryads or nymphs or something. In fact, look at the flavor text of Yew Spirit. I wonder what dwelled in the primordial forests before humans existed. So that flavor text does two things. First, it implies that whatever this spirit is, it very much is not human and yet is still a spirit. And secondly, this is more of what I was talking about when I say Innistrad suggested that maybe there was more to the colour pairing of blue-green than we can see on the cards. Because yeah, I also wonder what dwelled in the primordial forests. We can't see it because where it was is only a hole, but we can see what's left around that hole in cards like Yew Spirit, which certainly implies that there's something more to be seen. And to head the comments off at the pass, I know some of you will say, well, obviously Yew Spirit isn't human, it's a tree folk. But, and here's what annoyed me about the card 6 from Modern Horizons 3, if you actually read the lore, you know that tree folk on Innistrad aren't a thing, no matter what Ren tells you. Tree folk on Innistrad very explicitly, and not even in subtext, just in text, are trees that are being possessed by those same angry Geists I mentioned earlier. Tree folk isn't a species, the trees there aren't sentient. Lumbernot's flavor text, animated by Geists fused in its oak, it hungers for more life to add to its core. Ghoul tree, it uproots entire fengraphs, which are forest grave sites, to add to its twisted frame. But back again to Yew Spirit. Before humans existed, which to me implies whatever is possessing this specific tree is not the Geists of humans, but instead something else. So another possibility for the future, the next time we return to Innistrad, why not go back in time? We just did it with the Brothers' War, a current set reliving past events, so why not do it for Innistrad too? What was there before humans? Presumably still angels and demons, as they're explicitly a natural part of the plane's mana system, but whose souls were they fighting over? Why do demons look like that? Part of a demon's whole deal is that they want to corrupt people into selling their souls or whatever. Wouldn't that be easier to do if they didn't look like giant horrific monsters compared to humans? Wouldn't they be more convincing if they weren't trying to terrify us? Or do they look like that because demons evolved not to target humans, but something else that was there prior instead? And what about angels? They kind of look human, but why? Did angels only start being a thing when humans arrived? If so, was there anything there before them? And if not, did angels used to look different? Or perhaps more interestingly, is it less that angels look like humans, and more that humans look like angels? Is humanity on Innistrad somehow the result of angelic machinations? All of these are concepts that the plane has hinted at or implied, which is why it was so frustrating to see the recent long-awaited return to the plane boiled down to Innistrad is the Halloween plane that's all about having a wedding. Nephalia, never heard of it. Uninspired, if not outright lazy world building. And this is why people are so comfortable writing off the lore of Magic, because actually sometimes it is bad. WotC certainly in recent years don't seem to respect it. God. And speaking of God, another aspect of Innistrad that led me to think about what aspects of the plane could be explored if ever we make more than a half-hearted return is the difference between good and evil. And this is actually a point that was highlighted in Children of the Nameless, which is Brandon Sanderson's novel set on Innistrad. So this is a concept that has somewhat already been brought to the forefront, but not necessarily in card form and not by Wizards of the Coast themselves, sadly. Don't get me wrong, everything I'm about to talk about here is from WotC's world building and is in the cards, but it's never been the focus, and I think it could have been if ever we return. Especially now that narratively Liesa is back, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain. Traditionally, in fiction, not just within Magic, the colour white is portrayed as good or just or ordered. Think about Star Wars, for instance, with their light side of the Force. And black is often depicted as bad or evil and chaotic. What colour is Sauron's armour? It's black. What colour hat did the bad guy cowboys wear? It was black. When is Spider-Man wild and evil and out of control? When he's controlled by the black suit. And whilst this is just a narrative trope stemming, I imagine, from the fact that humans have a kind of base fear of the dark, and the dark is black, and so therefore the opposite of that, the light, must be good then. So, fine, it works as narrative shorthand, I guess. But it does have some particularly unfortunate racial implications that I've always appreciated Magic for how it handles that with nuance. Not always, they don't always nail it, but they often say that rather than good and evil, white mana represents selflessness and order, and black mana represents selfishness and chaos, without any kind of attached inherent morality. And so, sometimes white is the evil colour, because order taken to the extreme is just fascism under a dictatorship. Elish Norn is very obviously one of Magic's greatest villains, but she's a white card because what she wants is order, maximum order, in the form of every single living thing being converted, willing or not, into one of her machine horrors. And that's excellent storytelling. But that's not the case on Innistrad. Sure, white kind of represents order, I guess, but also, kind of not really. There's a couple of rule-setting cards like Angel of Jubilation that says players can't pay life or sacrifice creatures to cast spells or activate abilities. But for the most part, angels are sort of represented as warriors, there to battle the undead and protect humans, but is that order? Is that even selfless? Or do angels just hate dark forces and so want them gone for their own sake? Well, let's think about it. What creature on the plane represents chaos? And the answer isn't demons. It's devils. Sure, they work closely with demons, but devils are in red. And that's not unusual for Magic. Often red is depicted as the colour of chaos for chaos's sake. But that's not really what's happening on Innistrad either. Devils are chaotic specifically as a form of torment, and torment brings them joy. A devil's chaos is focused, it has a point, and it's disordered to perform acts of self-fulfillment. Because they think it's funny. And so it appears a devil's chaos isn't random, but is instead selfish, which you could argue is traditionally black's role in Magic. But if on Innistrad the archetype is taken by red, it becomes fair to ask, if red is chaos and selfishness, what is black doing? Bear that in mind. But if you look at Bloodgift Demon, at the beginning of your upkeep, target player draws a card and loses a life. Any player doesn't have to be you, which seems fair, if anything. Almost friendly in a multiplayer game. I imagine lots of situations where someone is behind on cards and would happily lose a life to draw one. Reaper from the Abyss. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died, it punishes the table by killing another one. It doesn't say may, and if there's no creatures left but your own, you would have to kill your own creature. Making a game environment where everyone's incentivized to stop killing each other, which is kind of weirdly pro the living. Ravenous Demon. Sacrifice a human to transform it, and then when you do, you have to sacrifice another human every turn or it taps itself and deals damage to you. A real smoke the whole pack approach to making you quit sacrificing humans. Oh, you like sacrificing humans, do ya? Okay, we'll do it every turn then, or I will kill you. Which, if you agree with the method or not, seems at least an attempt from a demon to discourage you from sacrificing humans. The more I look, the more I think demons on Innistrad are very, well, not good, but orderly. Like they're honest and upfront about their intentions. You sign a contract with them. They hold up their end of the bargain, and often those that benefit from these deals seems to be everyone. And that, as a concept, is what Children of the Nameless somewhat explored. But if demons represent order, and good versus evil doesn't tend to be an inherent factor when discussing the colours of magic, then this does put angels in an interesting position because, outside of Avacyn, who's an exception for obvious reasons if you know the lore, I actually don't think angels on Innistrad do represent order. I'm not even sure they represent selflessness. Angelic Overseer. If you control a human, Angelic Overseer itself gains hexproof and indestructible, and everyone else doesn't, including the human who's left in the wind. Meaning if you want to kill the angel, you first have to target the poor human. The angel's using it like a human shield. Angel of Flight Alabaster. At the beginning of your upkeep, pull a spirit from your graveyard and put it into your hand. But hang on, aren't these spirits supposed to be in the graveyard? Isn't that like your whole job, Angel? Read the flavor text, she's literally yanking these poor souls back to reality just to talk to them. Their deserved rest be damned, I guess. Requiem Angel. When a non-spirit creature dies, create a spirit token. Why? I thought the Geists were bad. Why aren't we letting these poor souls go? Why are they being forced to remain? Alright, read the flavor text again. Requiem Angel was a bit depressed, and so now she's downed tools. I guess all those poor affected souls can go screw themselves, she's not going to help. Now you can argue whether this is right or wrong, but morality aside, to me it seems clear that angels on Innistrad are kinda selfish. And if you're unfamiliar with Liesa, she's one of the original Archangels of the plane who was killed off before the events of the original set for the sin of making deals with demons. But now she's back, and so what I would like to see in the future, if ever we return to Innistrad again, is to see all of this explored and brought to the forefront. Because I think there are some really interesting concepts, and I feel like an argument could be made that Innistrad bucks the trend and has black mana be the colour of keeping your word, maintaining order and fairness, and kind of with these demon deals be the colour of, well, maybe selflessness and benefit for others, while the Angels of White are disobeying the rules to use people or yank them back from the afterlife to satisfy their own end. And in those circumstances, are angels still good? Are demons still bad? Or to go one step further, is white mana even really a thing on Innistrad? Could we see a set with only 4 colours in it? Or is that just what white looks like on the plane? Hell, I even said earlier on that there's crossover between the devils and the demons. Does the plane even really need red mana? I said earlier that these are questions I've asked about the Spider-Man set before, but I just think it's interesting I'm now in a position where I'm asking them again about an in-universe set. And I think seeing the humans of Innistrad confronted with all of these questions, and maybe alongside Liesa, seeing them start to work alongside demons with the intention of betterment, much like Davriel Kane did in Children of the Nameless, well, I think could make for an interesting set with some very interesting narrative conclusions, depending on how it works out. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What ideas would you like to see explored in future Innistrad sets? And do you think my vitriol for the world building of Double Feature is justified? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like 27 publications, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, Blank Space, Wan Paco Jozu, Miss Murder, a random Patreon, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment. Don't sign any deals with demons. Even on Innistrad, I doubt they've got the best interest of people at heart. And most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know, and I will see you next time.